On a cool evening in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles, a mansion long since abandoned seemed to hum with a life of its own. Jayne Mansfield's former home, an opulent estate in its day, was now cloaked in mystery. The pink walls that once mirrored her vivacious personality were faded, but they still held whispers of her Hollywood glamour. As the sun dipped below the horizon, an eerie glow began to emanate from one of the upper rooms. It was a faint, flickering pink light, soft yet unrelenting, casting shadows that danced on the cracked marble floors. The light didn't have a discernible source. Neighbors whispered that it was her presence, that Jayne hadn't left after all. Marissa, a skeptic and history enthusiast, decided to investigate. She had heard the tales, the scent of Jayne's favorite perfume wafting through the corridors, her delicate whispers echoing lines from her iconic films, and the inexplicable warmth that enveloped anyone bold enough to linger in her bedroom. Marissa wasn't afraid of ghosts, or so she thought. With a flashlight in hand, Marissa stepped inside. The air was thick, not with dust but with something unplaceable, an aura that tingled against her skin. As she ascended the spiral staircase, the faint scent of roses filled her senses, growing stronger with every step. She paused to steady her breath, then moved toward the source of the pink glow. The master bedroom was as exquisite as the stories claimed. The bed, draped in tattered satin, seemed untouched, as though Jayne herself might return to it at any moment. And there, in the mirror of a golden vanity, Marissa saw the faint outline of a woman. Blonde hair cascading in waves, a radiant smile, and eyes that sparkled like starlight. But as Marissa blinked, the vision faded, leaving only the faint flicker of pink light in its wake. Then came the whisper. Soft and sultry, it curled around Marissa like smoke. "If you're going to be a star, be unforgettable." The words hung in the air, unmistakably Jayne's. Marissa turned to leave, heart pounding, but not before a cool breeze brushed her cheek, gentle, almost like a farewell kiss. As she reached the front door, the scent of roses disappeared, and with it, the pink glow from the windows above. Marissa never returned to the mansion, but she didn't need to. The scent, the light, and the whispers were more than enough to convince her. Jayne Mansfield had left her mark on the world and her home. Even in death, she remained unforgettable. Marissa couldn't shake the feeling as she drove away, her headlights cutting through the quiet streets of Holmby Hills. The scent of roses lingered faintly in her car, and her hands trembled against the steering wheel. She told herself it was her imagination. It had to be. But as she turned onto Sunset Boulevard, her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. She glanced at the screen. No name, no number, just a message. "You saw her, didn't you?" Her stomach nodded. She pulled over, heart racing, and stared at the words. How could anyone know? Her mind ran wild with possibilities. A prank, perhaps? A coincidence? Before she could reply, another message appeared. "The bedroom holds her secret. She's waiting for someone to understand." Marissa's fingers hovered over the screen, but she didn't type. Instead, she stared at the mansion in her rearview mirror, now a shadowy silhouette against the night. The pink glow was gone. Still, the message wormed its way into her thoughts. Back at home, she pored over everything she could find about Jayne Mansfield's life. Her rise to stardom, the tragic accident that claimed her life, and the house specifically, the rumors surrounding it. The whispers about a hidden diary, one where Jayne had documented her thoughts, fears, and something she had only ever hinted at in public. A few accounts suggested it might still be in the house, tucked away in a place only she would think to hide it. Marissa hesitated, then called her friend Ethan, a filmmaker with a knack for urban exploration. If anyone would go back with her, it would be him. The next night, armed with flashlights and a digital recorder, they returned. The mansion loomed larger than before, its silence heavier. Ethan, naturally skeptical but intrigued by Marissa's account, joked to ease the tension. "You sure you didn't just breathe in some bad air? Old houses can mess with your head." Marissa didn't laugh. "I didn't imagine it. You'll see." Inside, the house was colder, darker than Marissa remembered. The faint scent of roses returned almost immediately, subtle yet unmistakable. Ethan frowned, glancing at her. "You smell that?" She nodded. They moved deeper into the house, the sound of their footsteps swallowed by the vastness of the space. When they reached the bedroom, the air felt electric. The pink light was gone, but something else was there, a presence, intangible yet undeniable. Ethan set the recorder on the vanity and pressed record. He spoke into the void. "If anyone's here, we're not here to harm you. We just want to understand." The room remained still. Then, faintly, the vanity mirror fogged up. Slowly, letters began to appear, as though written by an invisible hand. "Find it." Marissa's breath caught. Ethan froze, flashlight shaking in his grip. "Find what?" he asked aloud, voice cracking. The letters faded, replaced by a single word. "Below." The two exchanged nervous glances. Marissa's mind raced. The basement? A crawlspace? She was about to ask Ethan when a loud creak echoed through the room. The floor beneath the bed shifted slightly, revealing a narrow gap, just enough to hint at something hidden beneath the boards. Ethan dropped to his knees, pulling at the edge of the floorboard. "Help me," he urged. Marissa knelt beside him, her hands trembling as they pried the loose wood away. Beneath it was a small compartment, no bigger than a shoebox, and inside, wrapped in faded silk, was a book. Its leather cover was worn but elegant, embossed with a single gold J. They stared at it in stunned silence. Before Marissa could reach for it, the temperature in the room plummeted, and the scent of roses vanished entirely. The recorder on the vanity burst into static. Then a voice, faint but unmistakable. "Careful. Not everything should be found." The lights in the house flickered violently, and then silence. "Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story." Ethan's hand hovered over the book, hesitation clear in his eyes. "This feels wrong," he murmured. Marissa didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the book, her thoughts churning. The voice on the recorder still echoed in her mind. Not everything should be found. But why leave a warning if someone or something had gone to such lengths to lead them here? "We didn't come all this way to stop now," she finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. Before Ethan could protest, she reached into the compartment and pulled out the book. The leather felt strangely warm, pulsing faintly, like it was alive. Marissa opened it carefully, the pages brittle and yellowed with age. The handwriting was unmistakably feminine, loops and flourishes dancing across the paper. The entries were intimate, raw confessions of a woman who had lived under the scrutiny of an unforgiving world. But as Marissa skimmed the pages, her excitement turned to confusion. Among the diary's musings about fame, love, and heartbreak, there were cryptic symbols, drawings of stars and circles, intricate patterns she couldn't decipher. Ethan leaned over her shoulder, frowning. "What is that?" "It looks like," he trailed off, his brow furrowing. "Some kind of ritual?" Marissa guessed. Her fingers traced the lines of one symbol. But why would she include this in her diary? Was she? Before she could finish, the air in the room shifted again, heavy and oppressive. The door slammed shut with a deafening crack, and the faint pink glow returned, swirling like smoke around the edges of the room. Ethan cursed under his breath, grabbing Marissa's arm. "We need to go. Now." But Marissa couldn't tear her eyes away from the diary. She flipped through the pages faster, desperate for answers. Near the back, she found a loose scrap of paper. It wasn't written in the same elegant hand. The letters were jagged, almost frantic. "He watches from the mirror. Trust nothing." Marissa's blood ran cold. Her eyes darted to the vanity, where the mirror seemed to shimmer unnaturally, the glass rippling like water. For a brief moment, she saw something, a face, or perhaps just the outline of one. It wasn't Jayne's. Ethan didn't wait for her. He grabbed the book and yanked her toward the door. "We can't stay here." The pink light intensified, enveloping the room as the whispers began. Faint at first, then louder, overlapping, a cacophony of voices. Some were soft and pleading. Others were sharp and angry. Among them, One voice rose above the rest, chillingly clear. "You were warned." The light surged, blinding them. Marissa stumbled, clutching Ethan's arm as they pushed against the door. It wouldn't budge. Behind them, the mirror cracked, a thin spiderweb spreading across its surface. From the center, black tendrils began to seep out, curling like smoke but moving with purpose, reaching for them. Ethan rammed his shoulder into the door, shouting in panic. Marissa turned back to the diary, clutching it tightly. The symbols, what did they mean? Could they stop this? She scanned the pages, her vision blurring as the tendrils crept closer. Then, as if responding to her desperation, the symbols on the page began to glow faintly, the same shade of pink that filled the room. The whispers grew quieter, almost curious, as though they were waiting for something. "Ethan," she shouted, holding up the diary. "I think this is the key." His face was pale, but he nodded, letting her take the lead. The tendrils paused, recoiling slightly, as Marissa began to trace the glowing symbols with her finger. The pink light shifted, concentrating around the book, and the room trembled as if the house itself were alive. But then, a low laugh echoed through the room, deep and guttural, cutting through the whispers like a knife. The voice from the mirror spoke again, its tone mocking. "You think you've won? You've only just begun." The diary's glow intensified, and the tendrils lunged. The room erupted in chaos, the pink light fracturing into shards of color, the air thick with an unearthly howl. And then silence. Marissa and Ethan were gone. The diary lay open on the floor, its pages blank, as the pink glow faded into darkness. Marissa opened her eyes to find herself standing in the same bedroom, yet it wasn't the same. The walls shimmered as if coated in liquid silver, reflecting a distorted version of the room. The bed was there, but its satin sheets glowed faintly, shifting colors like an oil slick. The vanity sat in its usual place, yet the mirror was dark, an empty void that seemed to stretch infinitely inward. "Ethan," she called out, her voice strangely muffled, as though the air were thicker here. There was no response. She turned, searching for him, but the room seemed to stretch and twist around her. The doorway that led to the hall was gone, replaced by a blank wall. Panic clawed at her chest, but before it could take hold, a faint sound reached her ears: footsteps, soft and deliberate, coming from behind. Marissa spun around, her heart pounding, but no one was there. Instead, the mirror on the vanity began to glow faintly, not pink this time, but a cold, silvery light. A figure emerged within it, not her reflection, but a shadow, tall and shapeless, watching her from the other side. "Marissa," the voice was a whisper, yet it filled the room, pressing against her from all sides. She stepped back, bumping into the bed. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice shaking. The figure tilted its head, the movement unnervingly slow. "You don't belong here," it said. "Not yet." "Where is here?" Marissa asked, gripping the edge of the bed to steady herself. The figure didn't answer. Instead, the mirror rippled, and another figure appeared beside the shadow, a woman, golden hair cascading over her shoulders. Jayne. Her image was clearer than the shadows, almost tangible, as though she might step through the glass at any moment. "She's trapped," Jayne said softly, her voice carrying a sorrow that sent chills down Marissa's spine. "Who? You?" Marissa asked. Jayne's gaze didn't meet hers. She was staring past her, toward something unseen. "Not me," she whispered. "Him." Marissa felt the air shift behind her, colder now, sharper. Slowly, she turned, half expecting to see Ethan, but the room was empty. Yet she felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched, of something standing just out of sight. The diary. Where was the diary? She searched the room frantically, but it was nowhere to be found. "Jayne," Marissa said, turning back to the mirror. "How do I get out of here? How do I fix this?" Jayne's image flickered, her expression unreadable. "You don't fix it," she said, her voice barely audible. "You make a choice." "What choice?" Jayne finally met her eyes, and in that moment, Marissa saw something she hadn't expected: fear. To leave, Jayne said, or to stay. The shadow figure beside Jayne moved closer, its form shifting as it pressed against the glass. The mirror cracked slightly, thin lines spreading outward like veins. Choose, the shadow hissed, its voice reverberating through the room. But know this once chosen, there is no going back. The walls around Marissa shimmered again, the silver liquid pulling away to reveal glimpses of other places' hallways she didn't recognize. A darkened street lined with roses. A face she thought might have been Ethan's, distorted and fleeting. The shadow reached out, its hand pressing against the surface of the mirror, the cracks deepening. Jayne's voice rose, urgent now. Marissa, whatever you do, don't trust. The mirror shattered, and the room plunged into darkness. The darkness consumed everything Marissa, the room, even the shattered fragments of the mirror. For a moment, it was as if the world had ceased to exist. Then, faintly, a sound broke through. A heartbeat, steady and rhythmic, like a drum pulling her back to consciousness. When Marissa opened her eyes, she wasn't in the bedroom anymore. She was standing in a vast, empty void, its expanse illuminated by a soft, silvery light. In the distance, she saw two figures. Jayne, her golden hair shimmering like a halo, and the shadow, now taller and more defined, its edges flickering like fire. Between them was a pedestal, and on it lay the diary, glowing faintly. Marissa stepped forward, her feet echoing against the invisible ground. Neither figure spoke, but she could feel the weight of their stares. You said I had to choose, Marissa said, her voice trembling. What am I choosing? Jayne's expression was sorrowful. The diary holds the truth, she said. It's what he fears most. But it's also a burden. If you take it, you'll be bound to this place, just as I am. The shadow's voice rumbled like distant thunder. If you leave it, you walk away free. No more whispers, no more hauntings. You'll forget this ever happened. Marissa's heart pounded. Forget? The idea was tempting, returning to her life, untouched by whatever this was. But the thought of walking away from the diary, leaving Jayne trapped with that shadow, felt wrong. What's in the diary? Marissa asked, taking another step closer. The shadow hissed, its form shifting. Secrets that were never meant to be known, it said. Fame, power, they come with a cost. She paid hers, and so will you if you open it. Jayne shook her head. It's more than that. It's my truth. The part of me they never saw, the part one was too afraid to share. If you take it, you'll understand. And maybe you'll set us free. Marissa hesitated. The diary glowed brighter, as though it were alive, sensing her indecision. What happens if I don't take it? She asked. The shadow's laughter echoed around her. You live. That's all you need to know. But Jayne stepped forward, her gaze locking with Marissa's. And what happens to me? She asked softly. Marissa felt the weight of the question sink into her. If she walked away, Jayne would remain here, caught in this strange purgatory, her story silenced forever. Taking a deep breath, Marissa approached the pedestal. The shadow loomed closer, its presence suffocating. But she didn't stop. When she reached the diary, she hesitated for only a moment before placing her hands on its cover. The moment her fingers touched the leather, the void erupted in light. The shadow let out a deafening roar, its form dissolving into smoke. Jayne's figure glowed brighter and brighter until she was almost blinding. Thank you, Jayne whispered, her voice full of gratitude and relief. The diary opened on its own, its pages flipping wildly. Symbols and words rose from the paper, swirling around Marissa in a cyclone of light. She felt the weight of Jayne's life, her struggles, her joys, and her fears pouring into her. And then, with a final surge of energy, everything went silent. When Marissa opened her eyes again, she was lying on the floor of the mansion's bedroom. The room was quiet, bathed in the soft light of dawn streaming through the cracked windows. The diary was still in her hands, but its pages were blank, its power spent. Ethan was beside her, groaning as he sat up. What the hell just happened? He muttered. Marissa looked at him, then at the diary, and smiled faintly. I think we set her free, As they stumbled out of the house, the scent of roses filled the air one last time. When Marissa turned back to look at the mansion, she saw the faintest shimmer of pink light in the window, then nothing. Jayne Mansfield's house was finally at peace. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.